Everybody, thanks for tuning in to No Vacancy Live. That's Anthony Melchiorri. I'm Glenn Haussman. Thanks for spending some time with us today, Anthony. I'm super excited about today's show. How about you?
I love to talk. I love speaking to innovators, creative people, people that move the needle. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. But before we get to our incredible guest today, I just wanted to say that later on this week, you'll see it in the next week or so. Anthony and I are going to be at the Hard Rock Atlantic City doing a great conversation with the president of that resort. They really are helping transform the Atlantic City market. So stay tuned for that. All right, here we go. We got the incredible Mr. Monty Bennett, founder, CEO, chair of Ashford Incorporated, encompassing Ashford Hospitality, Trust, Remington Hotels, and more. Monty Bennett, so great to see you.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, listen, I've been a big fan of you forever, and I remember way back in the day, you were one of the scary people to talk to because you had already found some level of success, and I was just a little kid. And I remember you started some sort of collection at the time. You have to remind me in the year called, I think it was the Gallery, right? This is like 20 years ago, and you gave out the coolest piece of swag ever
You
that
still
I
have it, huh?
had all of this time because it was so freaking neat. So I've been a big fan for a long time.
That's great. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Glenn, the people that can't see it, explain what that is.
I don't, Monty, you're gonna have to remind me what was in it, but it's a big suitcase, and I remember you were like unlocking the collection or something like that, and there was something in here. I happen to have a real old camera in here, but it was holding something, and it had all this great padding in it, and I don't remember what it is. Do you remember what was in there at all?
You're asking me about something from 20 years ago? I can't remember what happened yesterday.
Monty, we stick with the trends here on this show.
I have no idea. It was so long ago.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on all the success you're having. For those of you who don't know, Ashford owns dozens of hotels as well as a management company, Remington Hospitality, which are both in the same office. Buddy, how are you feeling about the Universal Hospitality today?
The universe of hospitality seems to finally be on the mend. As you guys well know, we're back to 2019 revenue levels, right? Higher ADR, lower occupancies, but our costs aren't. So interest rates are way up from then, and our labor is up 50% or so. So our profitability is not close to what it was. But there seems to be a lot of enthusiasm now. I was surprised at the enthusiasm after the election. The stock market ran up, and it seems to be some optimism. I think as much as anything, just the certainty that something's decided and we're all moving forward. And so I'm optimistic. The numbers look pretty good on our books for next year. The new construction pipeline is low, which always portends well for future growth. So it's a great time.
Andy?
Yeah, no, it's funny because at the end of the day, like you said, the election, everything ran up. But at the end of the day, hotels are like a lot of businesses, unlike a lot of businesses. It's the fundamentals, right? You have to buy it right. You have to run it right. And no matter how good the average rate is and the occupancy is, if those two fundamentals aren't solid, no matter how much money's on top line, it's not going to the bottom line.
That's for sure. And it's been a rough operating environment for a number of years. Either costs too high, or you can't find employees, or you can't get the occupancy. Generally been able to get the rate. And you guys have seen how resorts have just really just soared, and we're able to get just incredible rates for a while. Those are starting to come down. But occupancy, especially with independent business traveler, is down, still down. And I think we just hit a new base, maybe 30 points lower than what it was, and we have to claw up slowly from that base going forward. Situations like this, Zoom and the like, have educated people a lot faster how to do business this way than otherwise would have happened. And so we're just going to have to start from this new lower level and make do.
I tell you, the Boston market is doing really well, and they're really, really strong. And I do some work up here in Boston with Cohen Hotels, and I'll tell you something. It's a strong market, and it came back. It came back.
You know, Boston is kind of unique. You know, they have they've really done a great job of integrating some more of the left-leaning policies that we're seeing in American cities with still a very strong sense of community and urban discipline and responsibility. And so it's a great place to go. Unfortunately, the city centers for a number of cities aren't that great to go anymore.
Yeah.
But Boston, good for them. They've just done a fantastic job, and it's a great place to go.
I couldn't have said that any better. As a person that spent some time up here, I thought that, but I didn't articulate that as well as you did. But that's exactly right. I walk around this city and I feel comfortable. I feel safe. I feel inspired. I get the history. The hotels are beautiful, as you know. They just opened some really good 5-star hotels here. It's just absolutely one of my favorite cities. And in the hotel environment, you don't have as many rooms as you do in other cities of this size. So the people that run hotels well do really well.
They do, and they've done a nice job. So kudos to them.
Yeah. I do want to talk about the Dallas market in a minute, but you mentioned something about low supply growth, which usually portends for better operating. That makes sense. But you're in a unique position because you have a management company and you want that each hotel to do better, but you also develop properties, right? And if it's harder to develop properties, you're not developing. How do you balance that two diametrically opposed forces? And how do you find harmony in your business for being able to expand both?
Well, it is a balance, like you said. So sometimes it's better to be acquiring, and sometimes it's better to be developing, depending upon what's going on. And many times at the same time in different markets across the United States. And so that's why we're in several of these businesses. To explain our platform a little bit more, we've got kind of a core platform, Ashford Inc., that has a property management company, a development company, an automobile company, a water sports company, and some other operating type companies. And then separately, there's groups of hotel organizations, hotel REITs that we manage and oversee, including Ashford Hospitality Trust, Braemar Hotels and Resorts, Sterling Hotels and Resorts, the Texas Strategic Growth Fund, which is non-hospitality, and some other collections of assets. So our operating company provides services to all those collections of assets and provides services to third parties. And our third-party growth has been growing really, really strongly. Our asset-based services hasn't grown as much because that group of assets hasn't been growing in our portfolios very much over the last few years because of the after effects of COVID. But we think that's going to change and see some growth in that area as well.
Wow. All right. So there's a whole lot of balls that you're juggling up in the air. Now back to Dallas, where you happen to be located. That Dallas-Fort Worth corridor is expanding big time. In fact, under the Remington banner, you just started managing the recently opened Le Méridien, which is right next to the Fort Worth Hilton, which you guys also operate. And I know all this because I was there a couple of times this last year for their annual conference. So you're in a very exciting place. So sharing what you told us, what areas do you think are good for acquisitions? What areas are good for new development? And where you just think like, I don't want to have anything to do with this these days?
Well, usually you're best if you focus on where the growth is.
Mm-hmm.
And the growth is happening in the Sunbelt states as people are moving there more and more for lifestyle and for better growth opportunities. Because businesses are moving there. We've just had some more businesses announced they're coming to the DFW area. And so we're having all these businesses move here. Something like 400 people a day move to the DFW area. And so it creates all kind of demand for hotel rooms, for self-storage, for apartments, for homes, for you name it. And unfortunately, it's coming at the expense of some of the other states, but they're driving people out. They're putting in policies that people just can't operate under. And that works to the benefit of the Sunbelt states. Nashville has just been booming. I'm sure you guys have seen that. Phoenix, Atlanta.
Yeah, Monty, I was in Nashville with a major hotel company. We did a tour of just their properties under new construction, and there were like 9 of them.
Yeah, I remember being in Nashville about 12 years ago, and everybody said it's growing and it's basically it's over. And it's topped out. Don't put your money here. And I remember sitting down with an analyst, a young lady right out of Cornell, and she gave me like an hour dissertation on why the market is just going to get stronger and stronger. And she was 100% right.
Well, there's if you're in one of these states that are more slow growth, and if you want to get out of them, there's a handful of cities to go to, right? It's DFW, it's Houston, especially if it's the energy business, it's Austin, it's Phoenix, it's Nashville, and a few others, some down in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're just the beneficiary of that. So if you're looking for acquisitions, if you're looking for development, that's where the action is going to be over the next number of years.
It's interesting that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd say 20 years ago, maybe before 2008, people were making maybe rash decisions and getting into this business that really had no business being in the business. And you don't see that as much. You see it very calculated. You see people taking very little chance. People are very calculated in what they know, and they seem to hire people like you and companies like your company to kind of keep them out of trouble. Have you noticed? And I think that was the difference between the downturn this time and the downturn in 2008.
Well, people are cautious, that's for sure. And I tell you what, COVID was an eye opener to all of us. I got into business in '89 and went through the '91 recession and said, well, that was bad. If we can handle that, we can handle anything. And then a plane flew into a building, and I thought, well, how often is that going to happen? If we can handle that, we can handle anything. Then we had the great financial crisis, which happens only once in every 100 years. And I said, well, if we can handle that, then we're fine. Then it comes COVID. So I stopped saying that, and I'm trying to diversify a little bit more. But it is an industry that is subject to the GDP and these kinds of things. And so you have to be cautious. And as you guys know, a lot of people, it's kind of like restaurants, right? People, they earn some money and they want to be the guy that has the nicest restaurant in town, right? Or the coolest bar, right? And hotel is kind of the step above that. Okay, we want the swankiest, coolest hotel. And so many times people see it as an extension of themselves, their personal brand, or these kinds of things.
It's going in my head right now.
Yeah, yeah. So you see that a little bit less right now. It also might have to do with the fact that they can't get financing. So maybe if they could get financing, that would change. In fact, it will change. When they can get financing, people build. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. People don't build when the opportunity is necessarily the best. People build when they can get financing. Now, usually you can only get financing when it's the appropriate time.
Yeah.
But developers, when they get the money, they build. And so as the banks start to loosen up, hopefully here, we'll start seeing more of that.
Yeah, but with brands being 90% of hotels right now, I think it was 80, and now I think it's getting closer to 90. And now you're having these soft brands. I think the brands have kind of helped that because it's like, yeah, you have to build it, but if you want to get into a soft brand, you want to get into a brand, you have to have some guardrails.
You should, and that's how you should do it. But the brands continue to be aggressive. They've been offering key money more than I've seen in the past.
Yep.
And we'll see if they feel like they need to do that as the development and new bills starts to pick up. But right now they're pretty eager.
Monty, so you're the first person we're going to ask this question because it just happened. Interest rates got cut again, another quarter point. So we're talking 0.75%, or was that 750 basis points? I still don't get any of that kind of stuff, which is why I'm here in your city. But so how do you see that maybe reshuffling the deck a little bit, because it's been such a difference now between where we were in August?
Well, I'll tell you what, and stay with me here for a minute, guys, because it's very interesting. Our debt load as a percent of our GDP, dollar-denominated debt worldwide, has been growing forever. And that's why interest rates generally has been coming down for decades and decades. And the reason is because smaller interest rate moves has a much bigger pronounced effect on the economy because the amount of debt compared to the economy is much higher. Mm-hmm. So this has been generally the case. And so they've been coming down now. But what happened here post-COVID is there have been so much fiscal stimulus, right? The government went out and just spent trillions of extra dollars that it just jammed money everywhere. And there was so much spending that started to heat up the economy. Yep. And so they had to start interest rates. If they hadn't done that, we wouldn't have had this interest rate run up. But they did it. And so now you've had to have these interest rates really go up to offset all this too much government spending. Well, the question is, with these reformers now being elected, are they going to really cut the government spending, because if they do, well, that's destimulating. So we're going to need even more interest rate cuts to offset it. Even if they just stay the same, that's not very stimulative in the spending, and we'll need some cuts. But if they cut too much, then even though we need it from a long-term standpoint as a country, we won't be able to take interest rates low enough to offset that. So they're in a bit of a pickle here. And if they're going to cut spending, they need to do it slow and long so it doesn't tank us.
I don't think anyone can articulate that any better. And I think, I follow the markets and I follow a lot of that, but I couldn't have articulated that as well as you did. And that's exactly right. And when people speak in headlines, get everybody excited. But at the end of the day, the adults got to get in the room and they've got to make intelligent decisions based on long-term growth and long-term decisions, not headlines. And I hope when the adults are in the room, they understand that.
I hope so. They need to give the people they lay off, long-term severance packages, and people may be upset. And how's that fair that the government worker gets this thing and I don't? But you know what? If they don't have money to spend, this economy is going to tank. And we need adjustment periods if we're going to relocate people from the government sectors to the private sectors. And it takes time, and the economy needs to adjust. And we don't need to just dip right back down into recession because we don't think people should get paid that. That's not in our country's best interest.
So it seems like we're on this roller coaster of having to keep spending as a government to keep things going.
Yep.
But there's also, we'd like to try to get control of this debt, which is now so astronomical, it doesn't seem realistic. I mean, my guess is we're just going to keep printing money and just keep going at it and stuff like that and punt it to 2 generations from now to deal with it. But how is this advising you in your business and making investments and stuff like that? Do you think more long term? Do you think more short term? I mean, how do you approach all of this?
It's difficult, and even understanding the framework, it depends upon decisions that are out of my control. And so I think you just have to do the best you can and more or less kind of ignore it, right? We know this. We know the federal government and the Federal Reserve are both inclined to keep growth going one way or the other, right? That's what they want. And so that's what I'm going with. And just understand that they make policy mistakes and other things happen that can reduce demand for temporary periods of time. But there's these other trends, as you guys well know, right? People just have more time, right? Companies are moving more and more to more PTO, more vacation time, more leisure time, shorter work weeks. This trend has been happening for decades, and you're seeing people with more times, and people love to travel. So you're seeing this leisure component of our industry grow in proportion to the individual business traveler. Now, groups hanging in there pretty good. In fact, still growing. People love to get together. So that's still happening.
Right.
But you see leisure growing, and I think we're going to have to continue to give them leisure options. People love to travel. They love to go places.
Well, I will see that and raise it. Around the time that you gave me that case as part of the promotion, Peter Yesowich, another great one in the industry, was out there saying Americans see travel as a right. And he was absolutely correct in that philosophy. Because I think now, a couple of decades on, one of the reasons why the hospitality industry continues to grow is because everybody wants to travel. It's not just going to your family for Thanksgiving anymore. It's going to those concerts, music festivals, just going for those drives, or just getting away. And Monty, you're right. Everything over the last 4 or 5 years, it's really become more pronounced as people have become more untethered because of advancing technology and societal changes.
You're seeing also an enormous transfer of wealth. There's something like $2.9 trillion transferred from passing generations to their heirs every year. And that will happen every year for the next 10 years or so, at least. Mm-hmm. So you're having these people that have new discretionary money that they didn't have before. And what are you going to do with it? Well, people like experiences and they want to go out and see things. So as a hotelier, you're trying to come up with the new experiences, right? our water sports company, we're servicing some cruise lines, right? When the cruise lines pull up to a port, people want to go in for an excursion.
Right.
Well, demand for cruise boats is just exploding. They can't accommodate everybody. It's off the charts. And so they're calling us up and saying, hey, we need you to offer more excursions to make these people happy. And
Right.
the cruise lines take a big scrape off the top, and that's a huge source of their profitability. Well, you take people into the interior to see the Mayan ruin. Okay, well, now what do? They've been on this trip. They've seen the Mayan ruin.
Right.
Well, okay, you take them out on jet ski. Okay, they've done jet skis. Now what do? So you have to be creative because people want more and more experiences. That's why you see these boats with all these slides and movie theaters and all this stuff on it, because people want to be entertained. And after they've done something a number of times, they want something new and different. And so the leaders, the people that are going to get ahead, are going to be the ones that meet that needs, that provide all these unique experiences for people.
Yeah, and you just said it, right? We've all seen those companies that stay with what they know and they refuse to grow, and you see them go out of business. And the cruise ship, I don't think there's any business that got hit hard than the cruise ship, right? We all got hit hard, but the cruise ship business was not only hit hard, but they were like the poster child for what happened that went wrong. And to see them kind of double down during COVID and say, no, we're going to continue to grow, we're going to continue to build ships, and we're going to get even more creative. I have a friend that actually builds different experiences for these cruise ships, and he'll on the back of a napkin write me what he's doing for X cruise ship, and I'm like, that's like really cool.
Mm.
And he was like, yeah, they're spending $10 million to do it. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So they're always innovating. So Glenn, unless you have a question, I want to go a little
I
bit
do,
different.
but they can wait. Go on.
So one of the things, as an operator myself, one of the things that I really love is kind of understanding from an innovator standpoint how they think. And obviously, I've learned a lot in the last 20 minutes. But when you have, as owning Remington and you have other owners, right, that come in and they speak to you and say, hey, this is what we want to do, or this is what we're doing, we want you to manage it. And then all of a sudden you have this collective hotels, maybe it's one, maybe it's 10, that's under your management. But the innovator, the owner, the developer, the founder is going off the rails. How do you, as a person that's at the same level, that has done everything that you're doing, kind of get them back to say, hey, we're going a little bit over our skis here? And how do you kind of like, let's go to lunch? Like, have you had those conversations?
Yes, of course, we had those conversations, and it's kind of almost like a lawyer, right? I mean, a lawyer's, when they advise you, they've got to, if they're a good lawyer, they'll tell you the law and tell you what they think the chances are of one thing happening or another, and then they've got to let the principal just make the decision. And so it's upon us to give our professional advice of, look, if you want to spend a whole lot of money to add this water slide or whatever, we think it's not going to help any business, or we think it is going to help business. And then they make their decision, and then we need to execute what they want well. And we need to do it extremely well, and we need to show them that we're doing well, so that if it doesn't work, they don't think it's because we didn't do it well. It's because it's just not an idea that people want. And that's the hard part that comes in, right? We don't want them to think that it's because we didn't do something right. And that's the difficulty. So you've got to be very transparent and very in touch with them about what's happening. And if you don't think it's going to work, try to talk them out of it. But many times they want what they want. It's their hotel, and they do what they want.
Yeah, and I would imagine there's been times where clients have come to you and you've walked away from the business because of things like, okay, they're probably going in a direction that we really can't help them.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. They many times have unrealistic expectations about the property, and their expectations that we just don't think are going to happen.
The reason I bring it up, because I think it's really important for people listening to our show, that it's okay to walk away because you're protecting your company, your values, your mission statement, and your people. And when you put them in a place you just to grab some money, is going the wrong way, then that starts to bring your business and your reputation down. So
it does. You're just buying a headache. You're just getting a headache, and you make fees for a little while, but it's just a headache. And that's not our growth model. There are some operators that are 30-day out, low fee, and we just That's just not our route. And some owners want that, fine. But in that environment, we find we can't offer the long-term services and success that the customers need and want. And so we tend more towards fuller fee, longer term with some performance outs, but the cut rate deals, it's just a brutal business, and it's something that's not for us.
Yeah, and honestly, one of the things that I've learned is I used to take work where I undervalued myself, and I got too much headaches from it, and it's just not worth it. But it's so hard to say no to business, particularly if you're a new company or struggling or whatever. In those earlier days, how would you say no when you needed that gig?
You need to start right, and that is with plenty of working capital. You just need working capital to sustain your business until you get to that level of revenues that keeps you going, and so you don't have that temptation, and you be patient, and you can be patient if you've got the working capital.
Yeah.
And that's true for many businesses, right? They don't assemble enough capital early on to build their business the right way and in a controlled way and in a quality way, and that's true for this business too.
There's two restaurants that I know of that are in my neighborhood, friends of mine, and one is not doing great, but they're going to be fine because they have a long history of successful restaurants and they have enough cash to sustain them for as long as they need to. And then another one who's playing with milk money, and they have a great concept, but they have milk money. And when you're playing with milk money, that you can't sustain that for very long. And I tell people all the time, the difference between a restaurant and a hotel, the reason you don't hear so many hotel stories and people going out of business is because restaurants, two cousins can go into business with $100,000 and then they run out of money, they're gone. In a hotel business, you need to have real money and you have to have real investors and you have to have a real plan or you're not getting a hotel built. Very rarely will you see a hotel go out of business and just close down. I mean, it happens, obviously it happens, but it's very rare because it's just two different places. So, when in the hotels, most of the time it's not milk money.
That's a great point, Anthony, is that when it comes to hotel development or acquisitions, the due diligence around the investing of that money is very serious. And it's not, just some extra change from a friend or a family member. It's real money, and people are much more careful in those situations.
Yeah, and they're vetting everyone in the chain.
I also don't know many people that open up a hotel with no experience whatsoever, but I do know a lot of people in restaurant and bar businesses that eat in restaurant and bars and think they can. Right? Monty, looking ahead to the holiday season, how are you feeling about it? And I'm particularly curious about set against the backdrop of, I think the consumer is not wanting to keep paying more and more in overall rates. So how are you balancing that and thinking about individual profitability for customer as the holiday season approaches and maybe even beyond as a philosophy?
Well, like every person in business, we're seeing what kind of pricing we can get, right? We're pushing rate, we're pushing occupancy, we're doing as much as we can. The question is, what will the consumer demand and what will they require? And at first I was worried after the election, maybe there'll be some protests or some other foolishness that will curb demand, but so far so good, and it seems like it's going to be okay. And if that stays on the sidelines, then I think you're going to see a record holiday season. Then you're going to see record travel. Already in DC for our DC properties for this inauguration, usually for a second inauguration, you see a backup in demand. And even though this is Trump's second, there's more demand now than there's ever been. And we're setting records at our Washington, D.C. properties as far as business on the books at this point compared to other times and on and on. So it looks like for the whole inauguration there in D.C. and general holiday travel, it's going to be up and it's going to be strong.
That's
But before we let you go, because I know we're wrapping it up, but before we do that, one of the things that you hear, especially people that have been doing it as long as we've been doing it, well, the new generation and people don't get it and all that. And I would imagine being as successful as you are, that you don't believe that.
Hold on one second, Anthony. I know where you're going with this. Also, Sloan just put up an awesome post about this very issue. Sloan Dean, the president of Remington.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, so I'll just end my question with How do you feel about that?
Yeah. I didn't see the post. So what are you asking?
I'm asking,
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail Anthony there.
let me just finish. What I'm asking is, when people say that the reason we're not successful as a business, a hotel or a restaurant, whatever, because you can't find good people, nobody wants to work, and the generation today, no one cares. What do you say to that?
Every generation has said that since the beginning of time.
Yep.
And so you've got to ask that, well, is this one different and that is really true? Or is it that we're comparing them to maybe ourselves who've been very industrious? There's industrious people out there, of course. There's many of them. And you just have to make do. But, Elon Musk has been a great inspiration to me. And if you read his book, he said something along the lines of, it's easy not to fail. Just never quit.
Yeah.
And you never fail. And that's what you need to be successful. Our industry grows at 2.2%. This is not the highest growth of industry. It's capital intensive, it's people intensive. And so if you want to make it work, you have to keep at it and stay focused. You'll find the people that you need, you'll find what you need, but you have to work, and it's not going to just walk in your office. And if you're willing to work, which a lot of people still are, you'll find it. And then you've got to find ways to motivate those people, and you can. You just have to figure it out.
You know, when I say to people, young people, I say, there are 2 million people in the Hall of Fame that didn't make it. And they're like, what? What do you mean? It's like they gave up. But there's somebody more talented than Babe Ruth. There's somebody more talented than Derek Jeter, Pete Rose, whoever you want to mention. There's a million of them somewhere, but they gave up. And if you look at the people at the highest level, whether it be Asani, whether it be Derek Jeter, whether it be whoever it is, Michael Jordan, whatever, they're this close to crazy. And I always say, like, I was just doing something for a 5-star company, and all the leaders were in there, and I'm doing a presentation. And I said, everybody in this room's nuts, right? And they looked at me and they got offended. And I go, come on, how many people? And I went through a whole list of only us crazy people do it. And oh yeah, I do it all the time. It's like, because you're crazy. And I mean that in the nicest way. And I love that saying. I've heard that saying many times, and it's one of my favorite, because you just keep going, because someone is going to give up on that path. And if you keep going, you're the crazy person, and then you win. So I just love that. I'm glad I asked that question. Sorry, Glenn. I'll let you wrap it up.
No, that's all good. I just want to say, as Slove's comment was, he says he's sick and tired of hearing millennials and Generation Z being referred to as entitled and or lazy. He thinks it's a gross misrepresentation and misunderstanding by baby boomers and General X, and he thinks the generalization is ignorant. Goes on to explain that they have more interest in knowing the why, and how all older leaders and managers are not good at explaining context fully, and where that divide kind of comes.
I absolutely love that. And, when I was growing up, people would say, especially in the military, if I want your opinion, I give it to you. That's over. And I love that.
Yep.
I love that people listen. I wanted flexibility when I was younger. I wanted a voice at the table when I was younger. I wasn't given one. Now, if you don't give somebody one, you will not have. I was just interviewing somebody, and they said, what do you expect? I expect you to be creative and direct. That's what I expect.
Yep.
That's right. And the markets always change, and the market for people changes, and you have to change what you offer in order to attract them. And if the market says that people want to be heard and be understood and contribute more in ways that traditionally they haven't, well, that's the market, and you need to adjust. And that's just how it is. And successful people adjust.
Yep. Last question for you. What are you most excited about in the hospitality industry going forward? Is it technology? Is it food? Is it investments? What are you most
excited about? Is it coming back on our show? Is it coming back?
You know what? That's a great question. I think I'm most excited about leisure travel and what's happening south of the border. It's just growing like crazy, both in the Caribbean and in Latin America. I mean, you're seeing cities that before you'd go there and it'd be some old tiny hotel and not up to Western standards. That is changing, and it's changing rapidly, where people are now having more income and they want to go to these places. And so you're seeing hotels being built in all these places, resorts and non-resorts, to see all parts of Latin America. I mean, everybody's been to Europe, and it's been great, and they've got great places, and everybody needs to go. But Latin America and the Caribbean is kind of like the undiscovered country, and a lot of people haven't gone down there very much, and it's really neat. I haven't gone there nearly as much as I'd like to, and I think there's going to be just tons of opportunities down there.
Well, let's do our next show at your Crocs managed resort in Costa Rica.
I would love to do it. Let's do it. That'd be awesome.
Monty Bennett, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
was an honor.
Thanks for your
Thank
time.
you.